look what we have here. Try to balance it, y'all. Try to balance it. This is the complete discussion of Toni Morrison's novels. Let's get into it. Welcome back, y'all. Welcome back. I finished all Toni Morrison's novels, including her short story, Recitatif. And now today I'm here to have a complete discussion. I have been reviewing these in groups of 3 because I read 3 each month. But this is a full review video, full discussion, all of my thoughts into this one single video. I'm going in publication order because that's the order I read them in. But before we jump into the actual books, let me like manage your expectations real quick. Before I jump into the books, I want to kind of talk about what to expect going in to Toni Morrison's novels. These are not passive reads. It requires a lot of active reading. All of the subject matter in every single book is traumatic. It can be triggering. It can be dark. You can expect beautiful, beautiful poetic prose. You can expect like just great writing, creative storytelling. You can expect descriptive writing. And you can expect a lot of layered writing, a lot of layered stories, a lot of layered thoughts that can then turn into a lot of layered discussions. So none of her writing is passive, like I said. It does require you to do some heavy lifting. Quite a bit of these books require you to go back and kind of look and see, hey, you know, what's going on? Because more than a few of her books are written in like this stream of consciousness style writing where it switches narrators without warning, where it just kind of flows and goes. Some of these books don't even have chapter headings. So you just, you do what you can with it. You do what you can. But just go in knowing that it's beautifully written. The stories are tragic and they all prompt greater discussions. They all deal with Blackness in America. They all deal with the after. Not all. Well, yeah, in a way, they all deal with the aftermath of slavery. They all deal with how we treat and raise children and what they see. They deal with what it means to be a Black man, a Black woman, to come from a Black family, have a Black history. Toni Morrison was not playing, okay? She knew what she was doing. She was an editor at Random House. She won a Pulitzer. She won a Nobel Prize for literature. She knew what she was doing, and you can see her genius within these pages. Like, you can see it within these pages. And I just want to let y'all know, when you go in, it's not the easiest to read. It's definitely not feel good, mushy all inside, but they're important reads. They spark greater conversations. They always leave you with more questions. They always leave you like with this dialogue that you can start, discussions that need to be had. They're relevant when they were written in the 70s, 80s, 90s, just as much as they're relevant today. And I just want to tell y'all, before we get into the individual book reviews, they heavy. Check the trigger warnings in all of these books. To me, it was so worth it. I had a time making my way through this catalog, okay? I enjoyed myself. There is one book that I actually read twice, which I'm going to bring it up in this. And other than that, I was just kind of going back and forth between pages. There were quite a bit where I had to go back and forth between pages. But I had a good time. I took my time going through them. Well, it took my time for me. Did have to go back through another one. I'm going to highlight that one here. But I just wanted to say, the work is great. You can see her genius shining through. It was relevant then. It's relevant now. Let's jump into it. Okay, so like I said, all of these books are unforgettable. They deal with race. They deal with class. They deal with womanhood, manhood, all of that. We're starting with her first novel, published in 1970, We have the Bluest Eye. Pecola. The main character's name is Pecola Breedlove, and she is a black girl who, I think they describe her. No, that's another book. She has dark skin, but she wishes and wishes and wishes and prays for blonde hair and blue eyes because, you know, that's what she thinks is going to get her love. That's what she thinks will solve all her problems. And it just really goes over like conditioning. You know, it goes over these crazy whitewashed beauty standards. It goes over child abuse and how children are protected. And you just, so when I read this, because again, this is the first book that I read from Toni Morrison, I was stuck staring at these pages. I literally was like, what? I was staring at the pages. Like, man, listen. This is one of the ones, it is separated by chapters. It's not like a chapter name or number, but it kind of starts out with sounds. So this, well, not sounds, but like a long word. So I read it like the chanting of a child, but that's how it's organized in here. This book was so, I read it. I was heartbroken. It was sad. It sparked great conversations. When I posted this on Instagram, I was talking about this book in my DMs for like weeks because it was so powerful and so like heartbreaking. I was like, dang, is this what the other books would be like? Low key, they were just as heartbreaking. One thing that I can say about this book is Toni Morrison did a really good, I don't know another way to say this, but she did a good job at humanizing evil people who hurt other people. Because oftentimes we think like, wow, that person is a monster. We think like that person is a monster. Like they're not human. No human is capable of that. But you know what? Yes, they are. Those people, like when we say monster, we still need to think those are actual people. You see them in a grocery store. They're your neighbors. They're, you know, they're around. You interact with them. And so we want to like, it's so evil. We don't even want to like put that trait on a human. Stuff that you can do to like kids, your kids, other people's kids. And you don't want to even think of them as being human, but they are. They are. And so she did a good job at that, which is why I can see why this book and others can be controversial because it was hard, man. It was hard. It talks about the harm of these ideals and how we treat people based on what. Like, it's stupid, what we put on people. This book right here was great. So that was the first one. Okay. Second, we have Sula, her second book. Sula. All right. This book was published in 1973, so just 3 years after The Bluest Eye. This book highlights womanhood, friendship between women, community, non-conformity. It highlights all of that, just like being free and finding your identity in yourself and not what other people expect of you. Still, same trauma. I mean, it's trauma-filled, all of these books, but beautifully written. You know, it brings forth greater questions about womanhood, about hatred, about the identity. Like the main character, Sula, she is a person and a character in this book, but she's also an identity that we place on women, on people. Sula is defiant. She challenges social norms. She is a character that you're not gonna read this and be like, oh, I just love Sula. Like, I have seen discussions where you either fall into one camp or another. You either love Sula for her independence, for her nonconformity, for her, you know, whatever, or you dislike her. That's neither here nor there. You know, when you read this, Sula represents something bigger than just one character and one person. So yeah, it's really centered around Sula, but it also highlights her friend, Nell. And it talks about their relationship, what goes on with that. It talks about Sula's place in her community. It talks about her mom, grandma, all that. And you just think when you read, it's like the generations of women, you know, and then the complex relationships and bonds that are in this book really bring forth light to some of the things. Like everything is not black and white. You know what I mean? Yeah. This was a book, you know what I mean? And then I don't even think that parts of this book were meant to be funny, but there was a couple times I like chuckled. And not because it wasn't like the ha ha, this is like pure comedy, but it was just like, I know Sula did not just say what she just said. And you almost think like, what? That kind of chuckle. That's Sula was a trip, okay? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Interesting. The way this book is organized is by year. So each chapter is a year. You see 1920, kind of fly down, 1922. So this one is organized by chapter, 1940. But yeah, that's Sula. On to the next. Two down. Have Song of Solomon, which was written in 1977. Instantly, I knew I would like Song of Solomon. This is a little bit thicker than the other two. I knew I would like Song of Solomon instantly. I just knew it. Like, yeah, I knew I would. This book is divided into chapters. Let me make sure. Yeah, so it actually has chapter numbers, unlike some of her other books. But yeah, chapter 11, Song of Solomon has themes of heritage, generational history, and traits, and the importance of names. Also talks about identity. It has a heavy emphasis on flight, how that has different meanings depending on what you're talking about. It made me think about, again, the significance of names, but also like just how much that's lost. Whether that's like, why is the street named this? Like your last name. Songs like that's been passed down through tradition, like nursery rhymes, things like that. Why? What is the meaning of that, and how it gets lost over time to the point of people don't even think it has a meaning. Yeah, but it's heavy themes of liberation and freedom and being held and bound by your past, and how that's not, it sounds negative, but it's not always a bad thing. So that's what this book kind of brought in. All of her books have like a religious undertone, some a little more than others, but a lot of these names are, biblical names. But your main character, his name is Milkman, and it kind of follows him and his journey of finding himself and figuring out what he believes in. You know what I mean? His best friend is like opposite of him in a way, and he's seeing that from the outside looking in, and then you kind of see him kind of grow into more of an understanding of why his friend might be this way. You see him understanding more who his dad is and why. You see him understanding who he is to his mama, to his sisters, just as a man. And it's kind of cool to see see it develop. You know what I mean? You get to follow him from a child to a grown man who he got decisions to make. So then I forgot this book from a thrift store. Look what I found in it. I want to show y'all what I was using as my bookmark. This was in it. I hope you can kind of see it, but it's the original receipt of this being checked out from the library, because it was from the Brooklyn Library, and it was checked out on September 2nd, 2014. They literally like have their receipts. So I was using that as like a little bookmark to make my notes or when I was getting ready for this video. But yeah, I thought that was cool. On to the next. We have Tar Baby, book number 4, which was published in 1981. Okay. Tar Baby was the first one that I It was the first one that I didn't absolutely positively love. I liked it, but I wasn't like, I wasn't like throwing myself into this. It took me a little minute to get through Tar Baby because I was struggling with like the love portion of this book. It is considered to a lot of people. I don't know if I would say it's a love story, but it has a love element and component to it that I was struggling with. I like this book for so many other reasons, and I dislike the love portion of it. What I liked about this book is that it talked about the importance of other people, like honoring the people that came before you. A lot of times, like let's take me for example. Am I a good example? Yeah, let's take me for example. A lot of times you are where you are and you forget to look back at whose shoulders you stood on to get there. You forget to look back at who took the hit so that you can be like propelled and do the next thing. You think that you did stuff on your own, but you didn't. You know what I mean? Like, oh, you went to go get an education. Who didn't have one but worked hard so that the next generation can have one? You know what I mean? And then you leave and you act like, I don't know. So this made me really think about honoring and taking the time to appreciate the peoples whose shoulders you stood on in your lineage. That could be your big sister, it could be your mama, it could be your dad, your auntie, whoever. But like, this is what this made me think of. So yeah, the main character, Jadine, she is a fashion designer who she stood on people's shoulders because they wanted to propel her up so that she can be successful and not have to live the life they lived. I think it was her aunt and uncle. And you get to see that play out. It's set in the Caribbean. The book is set in the Caribbean, but then it follows Jadine to New York City. But what's cool is this book was kind of slow, like you feel like the Caribbean life is. It flowed. She does a really good job at actually like catering her writing style to the type of book and the emotion and the feeling that she wants you to feel when you read it. So bravo, bravo, bravo. And this book highlights the tension between African life and Western assimilation. So again, it stars in the Caribbean real slow. She moves to New York City. There's that tension there. Really didn't feel the love story, but it did show a lot about identity again, a lot about what we look for when we're looking for love. Yeah, Tar Baby. I liked all of these books. There hasn't been a single book I disliked. But when I read this, I was like, dang, like these were hitting hard for me. And it was a struggle at the beginning because I was like, what is going on? Like, what is this man doing? Who is this other man? Like, who is this woman? What's she doing to that baby? And it took me a minute to kind of be like, oh, okay, now I'm invested because I was like, wow. But yeah, that's Tar Baby. Okay, you have her short story, which is Recitative. This was published in 1983. This book, short story, real quick. This one had a foreword by Zadie Smith, which I actually really liked her foreword. Never read a book by Zadie Smith, but reading the foreword made me want to read one of her books. Anyways, this book is like a social experiment. There's two main characters. You have Twyla and Roberta, and you're supposed to read it knowing that one is black and one is white, but you don't know which is which. It's important to the story, but at the same time, you really question where the importance lies. We know it's important, but to what degree? Like these women or these girls at the time, they they have stuff in common, but then they have stark differences too. How much of that is race? How much of it is not? How much of that is tied into their identity? You get a view of their mamas to see like if you can kind of guess which is which. I actually saw somebody say that they read it one time through with the idea that Twyla was black and Roberta was white. Then they read it again with the idea that Roberta was black and Twyla was white. So that was kind of interesting. I didn't read it twice, but I did look through and see like, which is which based on their mom. And then I'm such a I don't know. People say, I don't know. It'd be hard for me to be believing stuff. So I'm like, I don't know. Anyways, it was interesting. You kind of get to see the girls. They are in this like group home or foster home type deal, and you get to see them go from that to their adulthood, how that looks, what they kind of rally behind, where race plays a part in it. Then you have another character, a pretty important side character that this book kind of is aimed towards, and that's Maggie. And so I was constantly thinking, not constantly, but when I closed the book, I was thinking like, what happened to Maggie? Like what really happened to Maggie? So yeah. Um I'm not the biggest short story girl. I'm just not. I really don't like short stories like that. But I like this, and there's been a few that I've liked. I don't gravitate towards short stories, but I've read a few good ones, and this was one of them. Yeah. Short and sweet. If you're looking for something to read, quite a bit of this is the introduction. Let me just show you. The book starts here. This much is the introduction. So without reading the introduction, look how short it is. So yeah, that just goes to show you just how little it is. How's it organized? Let me see. Yeah, it's not broken down into chapters. It's just one little short story. So yeah, there's that. Next, we have Beloved, which was written in 1987. If you've heard anything about Toni Morrison, anything, I know you know Beloved. This is her most read, I believe. It's her most referenced, probably. It speaks for itself. Like, it has a movie adaptation. This book right here, I can't believe I'm just reading it in 2025. It was so much. It was heavy. It talked about the aftermath of slavery, like I've been saying. It talked about just how gruesome it is. Like when you look back on the past and you think about slavery and you think about, oh, it was abolished. Okay. But you still have you have people who were enslaved who are, or like people at the time that were enslaved and they were trying to get free. Like their life didn't just wash clear. They didn't get like these new white robes as soon as they left the plantation. Like PTSD. Then you have like other mental things. Then you have like, it's just so much with this. Then you have to live with everything that you've experienced in the generation before you and what you were born into. And it's just like, this was hard to read, but it did a really, really good job at showing a really good view that I feel like people forget about when it comes to slavery. Talks about the mother-daughter dynamic. This had a love story too with Setha and Paul D. You think about like, I don't know, man. So Beloved, I'm gonna read the back because I feel like I'd be so nervous to like give away spoilers. I want to tell y'all what the book is about, but I feel like maybe further down the line I'll get a better idea of what's a spoiler and what's not. But anyways, staring unflinchingly into the abyss of slavery, this novel transformed history into a story as powerful as Exodus and as intimate as a lullaby. Setha, its protagonist, was born a slave and escaped to Ohio, but 18 years later, she is still not free. She has too many memories of Sweet Home, the beautiful farm with so many hidden, hideous things happened, and Setha's new home is haunted by the ghost of her baby who died nameless and whose tombstone is engraved with a single word, beloved. Filled with bitter poetry and suspense as taut as rope, Beloved is a towering achievement by Nobel Prize laureate Toni Morrison. Yeah, so Seth is the main character, but also Beloved, and her other daughter, Denver. So, yeah, this book right here, tragic. Yeah. I end up watching this movie. I've seen this movie as a kid, actually, but I end up watching it again after I read this. And some people classify this as a horror. I don't think I would classify it as a horror, but I mean, the real life, like what it's talking about is horror. Like it's horror not in the sense of like a literary genre, but horror in the events that took place. You know what I mean? The movie was it was creepy. Like it was way more like eerie than the book to me. And so I was kind of like, oh, I might stop watching this. But I ended up finishing it. I don't like no scary movies now. I don't. But I ended up finishing it. Glad I did. Good pairing, you know. But yeah, this is also based on real life events. The story of Setha and her kids. So after you read it, you can check that out. Whew, child. Moving on. Next, we have Jazz, which was published in 1992. Period. Ooh, y'all, I'm making a mess. We making our way through this though. Jazz. The book flows like jazz. It's written like music almost. That's the kind of the way it reads. Like it's a rhythm to it. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's set in 1926. Again, the post-slavery era. This is actually so Beloved is a trilogy. Beloved, Jazz, and Paradise are the three books in the Beloved trilogy. So Jazz was the next one. It's also set in that time. You have Joe. It starts off. Let me make sure this ain't a spoiler. Cool. It starts off with Joe killing his mistress, his young mistress. It's not a spoiler. It's on the back. It immediately starts off with that. Do not pass go. I'm talking. Is it the first sentence? Is it? Let me see. That's the forward. Hold on. It's the first page. It starts off with it. But anyways, it follows them. You can kind of, Joe and his wife Violet have been married a while. And you just it makes you think about marriage and how Violet drove herself crazy. Like she was spiraling out of control. People nicknamed her Violent. She was spiraling. And it makes you think, like, again, where are you finding your identity? Is it just in this man's wife? Is it just as like somebody that my husband finds attractive? Is it only when he coming home at night? Where are you finding your identity, and where are you finding your ideas about what love is and what is not? And not just romantic love. It talks about parental love. It talks about so much. This one was all the books are triggering. I'm not playing when I say that. Every last one of them. But it was like, it just, like, love can be beautiful and freeing, but it can be obsessive and can drive you crazy if you let it. And so that's what this book made me think about, because I was like, girl, Violet, girl. And it's not just about them. She's the main character. There are plenty of other characters that this book kind of follows too. The Wild Woman, Golden Gray, but it talks about betrayal and the messiness of just all relationships, especially romantic ones, but all of them. And just like all the other ones, raises important questions. Child, this book right here, let me show you how this is organized. It has chapters, just not chapter names or headings. So you can kind of see that. Let me just flip so you can kind of see. I have some stuff. What's this I have highlighted? Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's good. Anyways, you see, it's separated, just doesn't have titles. Yeah. So yeah, that's Jazz. And then lastly, the last book in the Beloved trilogy, Paradise, which was right here, published in 1997. To me, I'm only one person. I found this to be the most technically challenging book out of all of Toni Morrison's books. This is the one that I said earlier that I read twice. I read it when I did my first review, and I knew it was good, but I knew I was missing something. Like, I was like, dang, did I not get something? Like, is it something I didn't understand? What am I missing? So I went back and reread it. After I read all of these books, I read this again because I was like, there's greatness here. And I'm not getting it all. And I need to get it all. So I reread it. Let me kind of show you how this is. Also, no chapter headings or even numbers, but it does have chapters. It is split up though, like in sections, but yeah, divine. Yeah. So this book right here, let me read the back of the book, and then I'm gonna jump into it. They shoot the white girl first. With the rest, they can take their time. So begins Toni Morrison's Paradise, which opens with a horrifying scene of mass violence and chronicles its genesis in an all-black small town in rural Oklahoma. Founded by the descendants of freed slaves and survivors in exodus from a hostile world, the patriarchal community of Ruby is built on righteousness, rigidly enforced moral law, and fear. But 17 miles away, another group of exiles has gathered in a promised land of their own. And it is upon these women in flight from death and despair that 9 male citizens of Ruby will lay their pain, their terror, and their murderous rage. In prose that soars with rhythms, grandeur, and tragic arc of an epic poem, Toni Morrison challenges our most fiercely held beliefs as she weaves folklore and history, memory and myth into an unforgettable meditation on race, religion, gender, and a far-off past that is ever present. This book, I told you none of these are passive reads. The most active read to me, where I had to turn on my brain, legit, like not just a little bit. I had to put my glasses on. Oh, okay, yeah, I had to do that to get through this book and to get out of it what I really wanted to get out of it. I told you I read it one time through, and I was like, I'm missing something. Had to reread it, but yeah, it has you can kind of see this contrast between a utopian society and a dystopian society. Has you thinking about gender, community, post-slavery, what it takes. Same thing that I thought about when I read Animal Farm by George Orwell, but what does it take to form a functional working society? It's not all pretty. It's just not. So this made me think of that. It started off with a bang. I just read y'all the first line that's on the back of the book. Yeah. It was a work of art. It was a stroke of genius. And it took me a second pass through to be able to fully take away what I wanted to take away from it. It's set in an all-black town. It's called Ruby, and it was founded by a group of black women. But there's conflict. There's conflict like there always is. And so it kind of, without giving too much away, that unfolds and unravels. People's lives are at stake and in danger. And it forces you to pan out, take a step back, and look at the patriarchy. And I'm not even gonna get into what you believe about the patriarchy or not, or what I believe about it or not, but it forces you to take a step back, get a panoramic view of what that looks like, and what's the implications of it, and the aftermath of it, and how is it present where there's no men, and how is it present in this, and how does slavery take a part of that? You know what I mean? So, and in her interview with Charlie Rose, Toni Morrison actually said that when she wrote this was her writing at the top of her game. Understood. Yeah, I could see that for sure. Yeah. But yeah, highlights heavy themes of mental collapse as well as societal collapse, heavy themes of identity, heavy themes of community, grief. I'm saying that about this book, but that can be said about them all. This is not one, like, if I had to recommend any of these books for somebody to read first as like their first introduction to Toni Morrison, there's very few people, very few types of people that I would recommend read Paradise first. Very few types of people. Obviously, there are exceptions, but yeah, that's Paradise, the last book in the Beloved trilogy. Next, we have Love, which was published in 2003. So, it's this one. This some of my books have been through it. Don't worry about it, but some of them been through a little thing or two. But yeah, Love was published in 2003. It also has like it's set in a desolate beach town, and it also has like the flow of a beach town. Laissez-faire, almost just kind of going with the wind. The ocean has its own personality. It's personified similar to how you see in Tar Baby. It the beach town and the ocean, it's his own character. You know what I mean? But yeah, it's talking about Bill Cozy is the main male character in this. And this man had, first of all, he it I don't want to give it away, but let me see if it's on the back. Hold on. He enjoyed the affections of many women who would do almost anything to gain his favor. Yes, and some of them were underage. Okay, and he died, and it talks about just how like love, just like I went over with in jazz, how love can be obsessive. It can drive you crazy. It can free you, but it can put you in a cage too if you let it. This book, what I liked about it is multi-generational. It goes over 3 generations of women, what that looks like. I like that. I love a multi-generational book. It's filled with passion and hatred, misunderstanding. Yeah, and then the way that this is organized, I'm gonna show you this. It's set into sections as well, but the one thing about it, it's set in the chapters are like separated like this. But the one thing about this is it's written from a stream of consciousness, and so you'll get pages and passages where it's like italicized, and you kind of got to figure out who's talking at that time. Sometimes it's like the grandma, sometimes it's, the mom, whatever, but you kind of got to figure out who's speaking, who the narrator is at that time. It's not really a problem to me, but I just kind of wanted to point that out because I've seen some people say that. This is another one where I know I said with Sula, I kind of laughed while reading it. I chuckled. I chuckled while reading this too. Again, it's not haha funny, but it had me say like, I know Vita said what? So yeah. Next we have A Mercy, which was published in 2008. This book, pretty short, not too bad. It follows like the slave trade. So it's like in the 1600s, and it deals with the main character. Well, one of the main characters, his name is Jacob, and he's a trader who doesn't usually trade flesh, but somehow he ended up getting a slave as partial payment for a bad debt. And it kind of goes over that and what that entails. This book, it like I said, all of her books have like a religious undertone somewhat. This one more than others because it really, really like tackles the hypocrisy of different religions. It tackles religious hypocrisy. It tackles like a lot that goes into it. The main character was grappling with her faith or lack thereof, and you had people around her where she would kind of be at different spots and how that would affect what they were willing to do is based on what she was willing to say she did and believed in. So really talked about that in this book. It talked about that mother-child relationship. This deals with loss, like child loss. It deals with every single one of these books is triggering and can be traumatic. I'm gonna keep saying, please check your trigger warnings. But yeah, this is interesting. It was interesting. So yeah, set in the 17th century, kind of like that intersection between religion, womanhood, community, race, and yeah, like I feel like another one of the main characters was dealing with abandonment, like issues, and that highlight was highlighted in this book. So that was pretty interesting to read too. We making our way. We only have two left. Two left. Okay, we have Home, which was published in 2012. I have said this before and I'm gonna say it again. I ended up liking this book way more than I expected. I know you like, why did you expect to not like it? I didn't expect to dislike it. People just kind of dog on her last two books a little bit, just a tad bit, because they say they're not as impactful. But to me, Frank Money, who is a war veteran that came back from the Korean War, and everything that looks like, what he did overseas, when he came back, and how his life looked after he got back from the war, being able to grapple with stuff that you did, things that you thought, your actions, that sister brother dynamic. He came back and felt like, I got to go help my sister. She was in her own situation, and then you kind of have that like you know how you, when you miss somebody, you have a memory of them and they're kind of stuck in time in that memory. And then when they get back and you like, oh wait, like you're not the same person. Like not in a bad way, but just like I thought I needed you for XYZ, but reality kind of set in and it's like, okay, yeah, you know. So that's what this book made me think of. Dark. Made me think about how veterans are treated. Made me think about just so much. How do you deal with yourself after you do something that you can't even, the idea of, I mean, and then like it's wrong, like it's a lot that go into this book. Well, yeah, wow. It takes place in the 1950s, and Frank Money was a trip. Let me see how this book was organized. It actually has headings, chapter titles, things like that. One thing I can say about Home and God Help the Child, which is the last one we're going to go over, these two were the easiest to read, hands down. They were not written like stream of consciousness. You could clearly tell who the narrator was. It was clearly organized. There was not a lot of mental gymnastics outside of the subject matter because that was still hard. It just wasn't as hard to read. I never had to go back a couple pages to see like what's going on, who's talking, wait, what's that, wait, what that mean, let me go back. Never had to do that with these two. Themes were clear, characters clear, what she was trying to get at clear. There was not a lot of, it just wasn't a lot of mental gymnastics you had to go through. So I appreciated that about these two. Then lastly, you have God Help the Child, which was published in 2015. This deals with, they describe the main character as being blue black. That's how dark skinned she is. And it talks about the unfortunate life and what she had to deal with in the name of colorism, hatred, child abuse, everything that encompasses. Her relationship with her mama and how that it all started there because her mama started being hateful towards her first and foremost. She was super, super light skinned and her birth dad. And it just talks about that. You get to see her mom coming to realization of some things in real time as it grows up. This is kind of almost like a coming of age story for the main character. Her name's Bride, birth name Lula Ann. And you get to see Bride develop into this grown woman who eventually will become a mother of her own and what that looks like. This talks about drug addiction and coping, child abuse, seeking acceptance, identity, so many of the same themes you see in all of these books. So much of it. This is the only book in Toni Morrison's fictional catalog that's set in present day. So this is actually set in the early 2000s, and it follows Bride, who had that hard life, is being discriminated against, being hated, being put in this box, and then she ends up becoming rich and living her own life, and you kind of get to see that. But even though you still get to see how that stuff is still affecting her to this day. So yeah. Oh, that's it, y'all. Let me show you the last one. This is all 12, and I had a time reading them, okay? It's so hard to say one when somebody asks me which one was your favorite, it's like I got a top 5. I can't tell you a favorite. What I know for sure was in that top, and that's gonna come in another video where I'll be tier ranking them. But yeah, that's it, y'all. If you read any of these, let me know what's your favorite. Let me know what you like, what you don't like, and I'm gonna see you on the next one.